the slides and read the slide
Give
copy.
him this here.
And then we're going to comment.
These, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And they're all in order.
Okay.
They obviously go with the slides. Now he's going to read the notes.
Okay.
He's going to read the notes and then we're going to comment. Okay, just like we did on the radio.
But this time we can see you.
So,
And all our eyes are on you.
you read those notes.
No
And
pressure.
then we'll comment on the notes. Right, and then we'll hit you with advance. Hit the next slide. I think you use the forward and backward arrows to advance and go back.
That should be flipped and
Our
rotated.
techie friends over there will tell you whether or not that's what we need to do.
Okay. You're going to use I can get you a second mic here. Who's the introduction?
That was fun. I saw it all. That was absolutely fun. But, doing the speed limit through the one where this guy comes out of the bar where 80 miles an hour and okay. Just in the speed lane. The car next to me decided they were going to turn left to go across the which he had to.
Okay, I think we're about ready to start our next session. Next up is going to be the Eyewitness Psychology. It's the emotional state of the paranormal investigation witness. And it's going to be presented by Scott Marlowe, who's our cryptozoologist. Denise Stoner is the chief investigator from MUFON, Florida. Go MUFON.
Amen.
And of course, Rich Ramsey, Southwest Florida Paranormal Investigations. So I'm going to leave it up to you guys. It's going to be a real good thing. So come on in. If there's anybody out there that can hear me, you're going to be missing something very special here. So let's all give a round of applause for the guys and let's get it going. Thanks.
Girl.
Before we start, last year I did an interview with Honey, your compatriot there.
Yes.
And she asked me some questions that had to do with the subject matter that we're going to talk about. So I think there's a YouTube video that she put out there where she asked the questions, but we couldn't obviously in that forum go into the depth we're going to go into today. So without further ado.
Okay. Personality types in paranormal phenomenon.
Interesting subject. Let me see. Okay. The subject is vast. So much to learn and employ as we discuss the human mind, personality types, and how to recognize them.
Well, there's lots to say about this as far as personality types and the phenomenon itself, and whether we're looking for ghosts and spirits, whether we're looking for UFOs, whether we're looking for entities that come off those crafts. How do we tell the difference between someone we're speaking to and who they are, what they are? We need to know what to do with that individual first, the witness. And what have we got here? It's difficult at times to make a decision. Have we got a total wacko? Have we got something else? How do we divide this into personalities, and then we can carry on with our investigation?
Now, rather than bore you with boatloads of psychobabble, Denise and I have put together some personality types that we've given colloquial names to as opposed to the scientific names or the psychological names. But basically what we're doing is profiling. And what you're going to discover here is that sometimes these profiles spill over into one another. So you'll get combinations of behavior don't be surprised by that. Also, we didn't paint a great big target on our chest. We thought about it. But these personality types also apply to the investigator and can therefore color the investigation work being done. So resist the temptation to shoot Moses coming down from the mount with the tablets. Don't shoot the messenger, folks.
As we talk about these various personalities, stop and think about it, and you might chuckle a bit because you're going to start to recognize some of them. Not just in the witnesses, but in friends and family. Here we go.
Okay, picture yourself. Picture your mind a well-dressed woman wearing lots of makeup and jewelry. When she enters the room, all your attention is turned towards her dramatic answers. You expect a huge entourage to follow her as she removes her coat, with flair while her eyes scan the room for an individual who will pay her the most attention. What is really going on?
Probably the most common personality trait that you encounter is a histrionic personality. So that's a self-centered individual. I think you want to advance the slide there, Rick. In their universe, me is the center. And I'm sure you can picture this. I mean, there's all kinds of bumper stickers out there saying things like, the world does revolve around me, or it is all about me. And that's pretty much what you deal with this type of personality, but there's several fine points.
Some of those fine points, they can be very, very flirtatious, but they're also very manipulative. And you're very attracted to them at first because of all the makeup, the jewelry, the fancy style. You're looking for that entourage and perhaps a very flaring cape, especially in the winter. There's self-indulgence. They have a continuous longing for appreciating they have a persistent behavior to achieve their own needs. And they're very, very manipulative. And you might not pick up on that right away.
Picture a teenager out of control.
Yeah.
I was referring to my wife.
In any
She's
case,
not here.
go ahead and read the piece that goes along with that, unless Denise already covered it all.
It says, when the trait is pathological, this person speaks. I think you did touch that.
I did.
You did speak on that. Okay.
Okay.
We'll just go ahead and move on.
No problem. But the important thing to remember is that everybody exhibits these traits at some point in time or other. It's not really a problem till it becomes pathological. So, of course, pathological means that is their primary motive of operation, their MO.
Okay, a narcissist is a person who is driven by
Next slide.
egotism, vanity, conceit, or simple selfishness.
Think about Casey Anthony.
Oh, there you go.
It can be a difficult thing to pick up on. They do have a very fragile self-esteem. And you might not know that because it can be well hidden. They can appear to be very tough-minded or unemotional. That can be obvious. And if you noticed Casey Anthony, she had that stone face a lot of the time. Was she told to laugh when she did or smile? Was that staged? None of us really know. You're going to have to guess at it when you have a witness that appears to be that way. They do fail to recognize other people's emotions and feelings. The empathy, they don't have any.
And then, of course, when you're looking at this in terms of paranormal investigations, be that cryptozoology, be that ufology, be that spiritualism or ghostology, if you will, obviously they want to draw attention to themselves, and one of the reasons I made the little quip about think of a teenager out of control. Don't we know that some teenagers just love to do things to be noticed? Whether it's good attention or bad attention, they just want the attention. So they can use paranormal phenomenon as a means to gain that. And you have to really watch them carefully to know whether anything that they say which could be real might be severely exaggerated with them as at the center or the epicenter of everything that went on.
All I know is, she was in prison. She got out of prison. Now she's back in prison. She just can't be out in public anymore, or she's going to get really severely hurt.
And I'm going to give you an example from a case that we worked on that has gone way, way out there beyond what it should. A young man went to his dad and said, there's something outside my window and it's in the tree. And I think it's an ET. So Dad contacted us. And we sent someone out there right away. Before we got there, Dad opened the back door and imprinted a large footprint next to his trash can and took a casing of it. We didn't know that at the time. Our investigator got out there, and by then, Son had seen something else looking in the window at him. It took us a long time to find out what was true and what wasn't. We know something happened, for sure, to the son, but we could never get the truth out of it. Pretty soon, Dad wants to sell T-shirts. He's got the media out there. We had asked him not to. There's a whole story behind the son, who we find out does not belong to that man officially. He's got guardianship of him, but he was raised in a cellar for the first 6 years of his life.
Oh my goodness.
He has still had something occur that's abnormal. But now Dad's got the media. He has started a new age group in his living room. He wants to sell this and that and the next thing, and he accuses us of not handling this properly. So he wants all the evidence we have gathered back, and
We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. That's not quite a narcissist.
no, well, it turns out that the dad is, because he has all of these facial features
And
and
this
so
is where
forth.
we're going to run into the crossover. When we get to
We're
another
gonna-
type, you'll
yeah.
see what we're talking
We're
about.
going to cross over to that, but this was a very, very messed up situation. And we're going to cross over, and I will end the story as we move on to the next one. So, over we go.
Okay, I just wanted to say I remember that case and I know the investigator.
And here you see why it spills over. The father was clearly a media hound.
That's right.
And of course, if you guys watch Wife Swap,
Oh, yeah.
all right, remember the kid, the balloon?
Oh, yeah.
Another classic example.
Okay, media hounds. A person usually is less well known or a former celebrity who actively seeks the attention of the media by participating in stunts that generate attention in the form of headlines or news.
Very true. And it's a kind of a predator-prey type thing at times. It's normal drama for these type of people. The rest of us don't understand. As far as celebrity, Lady Gaga. She's just a whole mixture of personalities. And what has happened with our media hound very briefly is that we ended up having to return all of our evidence, and we no longer have anything to do with the individual. This is now a year down the road, and he wants to sue us because we're not handling his case. He's lost all his media attention, and that's how that's working out.
I don't think there's anything I need to add to that. You guys can certainly see, and I know that you've all encountered this type. And if you haven't, wait till you do. But in any event, you can see how this can impact and color your investigations.
Next slide.
Okay.
Ah, yeah, the more insidious version.
Yes. Somewhat more investing
Okay.
than the media hound. A closet attention seeker is a person who aspires to publicity, but isn't obvious about their intentions. They often are content to ride the coattails of people who have celebrity in hopes of attention by association.
The most classic example of this one is I had a quote individual, or I had an individual who apprenticed himself to me, and absolutely went into hysterics if he wasn't included in a coming to a television filming. One in particular, because his hero was Josh.
Gosh, what's his name now?
Matt Gates from Destination Truth.
No.
And of course, I was sworn to absolute secrecy and couldn't take anybody, but I thought he was going to have a total hissy fit when he wasn't asked to come. But shortly after that, I did a Monster Quest episode on killer chimps. And we did invite him to come with his son to that. And of course, in that particular case, I said, please give the guy a little camera time. If he winds up on the cutting room floor, just so be it, but just film him a little bit. But that was primarily because just before that one, I did one for Discovery Channel. And he literally walked up the side while we were filming and tried to cross in front of the camera, so he would be in the background, be able to go, see, that's my moment of glory. There I am, and ruin the shot. And of course, that's one of the reasons why production companies are not very happy about having bystanders, because this problem comes up all the time.
And just for your information, Scott is extremely generous with giving everybody an opportunity to assist him and help out as much as possible. So this guy was just way out there taking advantage of everything he was given.
P.S. Subsequently, and we'll talk about this as in behind the scenes, I recommended this gentleman and his wife to be on Wife Swap, the Bigfoot episode. And of course, then it becomes, it's all about me, it's not about you, and I don't care what you've done, and then they're too big to work their celebrity once they've got it because they're too important. So, watch out for this type.
Next slide.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Moving right
This
along.
next one I've been accused of.
Oh, Lord.
No.
Oh, yes, the drama queen. Oh, you know all about this one. Oh, you've had some great experiences with that one.
A drama
You're
queen.
going to hit us with the mother-in-law
Yes, I am.
story? Go ahead.
Oh, no.
A drama queen is someone with a demanding or overbearing personality who tends to overreact to seemingly minor incidents. A drama queen often views the world in absolutes. They tend to become needless, dramatic whenever the world is disrupted, or to create disruption to have a stage to act out their drama.
Little tiny setbacks set these people off. It can trigger explosive emotional behavior, and you don't see it coming. They can be the sweetest things, and you think they're wonderful, but they can become demanding and overbearing with the snap of a finger. And I will give you the example of my mother-in-law. She was a very, very beautiful woman. She looked like Grace Kelly. She had been a model. Just a gorgeous woman, but she would walk into a room full of people. If she got no attention, she was the best person in the world to slide down your refrigerator, the dying swan, right onto the floor. If she was at a table, she went underneath it. It was best to do it on the floor in the kitchen because my husband walked right over her, looked down and said, "Hi, Mom," and kept right on going. In which case she didn't know what to do. And they don't. If there's no reaction, they're stumped. That's your drama queen.
And in my life, my grandmother had to be the Academy Award winner. From the time I was born until the time she actually did pass away, she was dying. That's a span of about 35, 40 years. And my dad actually was a snowbird, and we used to come down here in the winter in Sebring, and Dad worked at Harder Hall across the lake. And she stayed with us one winter, and she would barely get up and move. And, oh, I'm dying, I'm dying. Do you love me? Go get me a glass of water. Do you love me? Go get me a sandwich. And finally one day I just said, okay, enough of this. I know you're not dying. Hey, Grandma, do you like my new rat? Believe me, she knew how to move. And I chased her around the cottage about 4 or 5 times. So we can have some fun with them, but obviously the problem with the drama queen is they over-exaggerate everything. So if you encounter one of these as a cryptid or a UFO eyewitness or a ghost eyewitness, guess what you're going to get?
Next slide.
Okay.
Unless you've got a comment.
No, just, there's always a lot of negativity that comes along with the drama queen, but mother-in-laws always seem to come to mind. Next slide. Practical joker. A practical joker, also known as a prankster, gagster, or punker, is mischievous. Sorry.
Mischievous.
I need water. Trick player who targets a person or persons. Their jokes are especially designed to cause the victims to experience embarrassment, indignity, or discomfort in an effort to make the jokester feel superior.
And this individual will hide their true intent. You won't see it coming. You're targeted right away, but they'll hit you when you least expect it. And Scott will give you a couple of examples, I think.
Well, I encounter this type all the time in the cryptozoology blog boards, and usually they're cyber bullies. One of the classic things is for several weeks they will be your very best buddy until they get every little detail of every little personal weakness they can possibly get out of you, and then they take it and they use it against you. So the cute trick is don't trust anybody, at least not on the boards that you don't know. But I have one in particular who is a die-hard cynic. So anything and everything you post, even if he agrees with it, he tries to pick it apart. So you've got to be prepared to get into some pretty significant arguments to back yourself up, and it'll go on forever. And another thing that they're really good at is they can't stand not having the last word.
If you're going to be at the social tonight, be careful. Kind of follow this category.
But of course, in my end of the world, I can't speak to yours, but in my end of the world, this is a real track that I have with me. These types of people will go out and plant tracks to prove to everybody that you don't know what you're talking about. They'll even, let me tell them the story about UFO Eddie.
I'm sure you've all heard about UFO Eddie.
No?
We had a Central Florida Cryptozoology Club meeting, and another type that I'll talk about eventually introduced me to this gentleman, Eddie. I forget his last name now, but in any event, he started telling us a story about dealing with the swamp ape, and wanted to meet me and Ed Kraft, who I was doing a radio show with at the time, specifically to discuss it. So we sat down with him. No sooner would 3 words come out of his mouth than I had him pegged as a hoaxer. For one thing, the governor of the state of Florida doesn't give permits to go out into the swamp to live with swamp apes on territory that doesn't belong to the state of Florida, at least. In any event, so I just said, well, we know this is a hoax. I'm kicking it under the table, and Ed's going, while he's telling his story. So he arranges for us to go out with him on an expedition. Unbeknownst to him, I bought my little portable DVD, or I should say digital audio recorder. So I'm recording the entire thing. Well, they staged some pretty good hoaxes. This is a couple of days later, and we played along with it, assuring them, or Eddie and his friends, that we were going to cover it on the radio show, which we did. It's a 2-part special. The first night, we go on and we tell the whole story. The next night, we go on and we expose everything as to what they did, including Eddie's criminal background, which was public record. Needless to say, you wouldn't have survived the atom bomb drop in Lakeland. They went absolutely berserk that they had been exposed. The coup de grace was he claimed that he had photographs in disposable cameras from when he spent his 3 weeks living with swamp apes in the Green Swamp. We challenged them to develop the film. They finally did develop the film, and guess what was on it? Nothing.
Yeah, just all you have to do is go to YouTube. Look under paranormal or ghost. So, if I'd actually caught something and got the money shot, you probably will never see it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Whack jobs.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, I know one.
The psychopath exhibits an inability to form appropriate human attachments and abnormal lack of empathy towards others. This trait is usually masked by an ability to appear outward, normal, or even charismatic. The term sociopath is similar, but in this case, the person disregards social norms and conventions as well. The politically correct term for these dysfunctional personality types.
God, it's like eating at Andy's.
Okay.
And we've got a special social type for that too.
The politically correct term for these dysfunctional personality types today is antisocial personality disorders. These people are cold and calculating and exhibit intimidating, belligerent, and often violent behavior when confronted or challenged.
These people can be very, very violent. They're egocentric, but they have a need to be humiliated, and they will keep it up and keep it up until you do it.
And they're the most dangerous. Typically, these are the ones that offer death threats, a few that I've gotten. One of the most classic ones, I don't know if you guys are aware that I did the Jennifer Ward investigation in Lakeland back in 2004. A whack job who was in prison at the time in Georgia managed to get Ms. Ward's, how they actually got it, I don't know, because none of the reporters said that they gave it out, but somebody obviously did. They got her address and wrote her letters and finally claimed to be half Bigfoot in order to get her attention. Of course, I intercepted the letters because she was a good witness and she listened to me and did exactly what I told her to do, including telling CBS to go take a flying leap when they wanted to do an interview and tell her what she was going to say on the air. But we'll get to that one too. That's another type. In any case, I contacted the warden at the prison and suggested that the gentleman involved should be given a test to determine whether or not he was a Bigfoot or partially a Bigfoot. And the warden asked me, "How do you propose to do that?" My answer was, "Elementary, my dear warden, elementary." You know what the alimentary canal is.
Next.
Okay. Schizophrenics.
Oh boy.
There are some very clever schizophrenics among us. Some barely function in society. So this individual decides they have seen a ghost or a UFO and wants to report it. You are in the ride of your life. Other functions quite well and full of charm and wit. But it won't be long before this personality is outed by your simply questioning what they have reported.
That is true. Because this individual could be having auditory hallucinations, paranoia, bizarre delusions, and he's completely disorganized. You'll start to notice his speech skipping from here to there to the next place. His thinking is just all off altogether. He's socially inept. You will find that out very quickly. His behavior becomes off-center very quickly also, and you notice that he just doesn't fit in society. It can appear all right to begin with. He may be functioning somewhat, maybe holding down a job. That's on the mild end of the spectrum. Spend a little while with these people, or they go off their meds, and you've got a problem.
And that brings up a point. Sometimes schizophrenic-like behavior can be drug-induced. So one of the first things that you need to do when you investigate is to ascertain if they're taking any over-the-counter prescriptions. You want to advance to the next slide? Let's start with the delusional.
Okay.
Well, I think we've covered that one, so we can go on to the next.
We covered this one here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good enough.
Okay. Yeah. I have certain problems with my feet, as I'm sure all of you are now aware, and from time to time I have to take Flexeril. Well, it is very well known that Flexeril causes auditory hallucinations sometimes as a side effect. So a simple muscle relaxant can cause you to start hearing your name being called, which I do when I take it, or having other types of auditory hallucinations, which could be things like EMPs or EVPs, I forget what they call them in the ghost world.
EVPs.
Okay. So, and you start to wonder, what's going on. But of course, if you know that these are the results of certain meds, then you don't, then you've got some place to go. Other meds that can cause this is Depakote, Wellbutrin, let's see, I think Prozac even to a point is known for it. So, get a list of the medications that the individual you're interviewing is taking, and the herbal equivalents don't always cause those types of side effects, but they have been known to.
Let's see. Well, I think you covered that pretty good. Let's go on to the next one.
Were you driving when you got into that car accident?
I was.
Okay. We'll go on to the next.
I think he's trying to be funny.
Jokes are.
Dementia. This is a loss of brain function through aging, disease, toxins, and drugs. Dementia can affect memory, thinking, language, judgment, and behavior.
Dementia can be a difficult thing to recognize also. It can go between normal functioning 1 minute and something really strange occurring the next. It affects thinking, of course, and your short-term memory. What they call to report to you 1 minute, and then mix that with some medication. You go out to take a report, and they may not know what you're talking about, or they may begin to exaggerate and add to their story.
Or forget that they told you.
Or, yes, forget what they told you to begin with. Or they may have a change in personality by the time you get there. So you just have to be very careful. Again, we're mixing personalities and problems.
That's fine. I think we've covered
Okay.
Yeah, being in the medical field and being a fireman for many years, I mean, this is one of the hardest patients I've had to work on. Is trying to find out, basically where they live, and it's like pulling teeth. And I know for like the sheriff's department is trying to get them in the right direction.
It is, and sometimes it gets comical, even though it's sad. We have a neighbor who has dementia just now, and he's really, really funny. He's maintained a sense of humor, and I caught him wandering, and I said, can I help you find your house? And he knew who I was, but he didn't know where he lived. And I said, well, how about we take out your driver's license? And he said, oh no, that would be cheating. So
And we all have our senior moments. I mean, from time to time I forget where I parked when I'm at the grocery store. So, but again, these types of people, you've got, particularly with the short-term memory loss, again, with my grandmother, towards the end, she could remember things that happened 40 years ago like it was yesterday, and what happened 3 minutes ago she couldn't remember. So this becomes a real important thing if you're trying to get recall and detail about a paranormal experience.
Yeah, I'm going through that right now with my grandmother. She's starting those symptoms. Paranoia.
Oh, God.
It's a thought process believed to be heavily influenced by anxiety or fear, often to the point of irrationality and delusion. Paranoid thinking typically includes obscurity beliefs concerning a perceived threat towards oneself.
Yeah, this is another difficult one because their thought process is just heavily influenced by the anxiety that something or someone is out to get them. So if you sit down with a witness that is going through a paranoid period sitting across from you and it's a really bad episode and they're just doing like this, uh-oh, who's behind me, who's coming under the table, who's outside looking in the window, got to start to figure this out. Is there something really going on? Is it a haunting? And if it is, have we got something bad there? If there's a spirit, is it a negative one? Or is it a UFO sighting? Has he been abducted? Or is he just plain paranoid?
Well, in your world, Denise, most of them wear tinfoil hats.
Yes, they do.
In my world, let's go back to that gentleman that snuck in front of the camera. The UFO Eddie, the one that introduced us. He was a classic paranoid. In addition to being a classic paranoid, he was in law enforcement. In any event, we could not go out into the woods without him going berserk. There was a Bigfoot around every tree watching him. And whenever we had anything that might be a legitimate sighting, he would find a reason to disappear very quickly and go home to mommy. Now, this is a big guy who made me look like Twiggy, carrying a gun everywhere he went, and was just could be turned into a basket case if he thought anything was actually going on. Now, the interesting thing in my world is people that put on these Bigfoot expeditions have a tendency to attract this type. And they're fun. Because when you add a couple of paranoids to group dynamics, the group lives down to the lowest impulse of the lowest member of the group. So the second you have the paranoids running around, we're being watched, there's a Bigfoot around that tree, the whole group starts to panic.
Oh, God.
And it really is absolutely horrendous. And, tune into Finding Bigfoot, you'll see it in work.
The person that comes to mind for me is Sarah Winchester. If you're familiar with her, she kept adding rooms to her home.
Oh,
yeah.
To hide from spirits that were, I guess,
Yeah.
mediums had, or psychics had informed her that she needed to, that they were coming after her. So she thought that with all the guns that her husband had created, I guess that all the people that died from them, they were going to come and haunt her. So she was very, very paranoid. Delusional.
Oh, boy.
A delusional is a person who exhibits behavior that is characterized by holding one or more non-bizarre beliefs in the absence of any other significant behavior pathology. Non-bizarre delusions are fixed beliefs that are certainly and definitely false, but could possibly be plausible. Typically, this manifests as someone who thinks he or she is under surveillance.
And they do believe they're under surveillance, but this you might recognize. A lot of them believe that a celebrity is in love with them, and they're going after them, and they won't take no for an answer.
Who was the one that was in love with Jodie Foster? Classic delusion.
Classic delusional, in love with Jodie Foster. It's been years and years now, but that's one of them. They also believe that they have a special, unrecognized talent, and they're very angry that no one can see it. They feel like they're being cheated, spied on at every corner, and they're mistreated. And another thing that's going on, they can have insects crawling under their skin all over the place, and no one else can see them, but they do, and they feel them.
Gee, we call that rednecks with DTs.
There you go.
Well, I think the cartoon says it all. We get this type in the cryptozoology field constantly, and we even have them say that, oh well, a Bigfoot named Fox is walking up to my front door and knocking on it and borrowing garlic every afternoon and talks in this really obscure Seminole language. So you can spot the type pretty quickly.
Yeah, you get that in ghost hunting too. There's a lot of delusional people out there. Bizarre behavior.
Oh boy.
Bizarre behavior is markedly unusual activity in appearance, style, or general character, and often involves being gorgeous and unexpected elements of outrageous or whimsical, strange, odd, bizarre clothing or demonstrations.
I can give you a good example of that, Britney Spears, at her worst. That's typical of someone who wants to demonstrate bizarre behavior. And of course they're going to get all the attention that they want, whether good or bad. It just depends the mood they're in. Of course they're stressed. They definitely have a problem. And how much are they going to get away with before someone comes and gets them and takes them off for the help that they need, whether it works or not?
And you've all encountered these, I'm sure, because I see one on the highway at least every day. They usually pull up next to you with an excessively loud motorcycle. And notice that I'm saying excessively loud. I understand that a Harley has a low grumble. Okay? That's normal. But when it's got a low grumble, it becomes a roving earthquake. That's not necessary. The same thing with the loud stereos, with the boom, 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 playing way outside of the car, enough that makes you wish that you had stock in Beltone. Those are really good manifestations of this type of behavior. So of course, a paranormal experience, whether it's a real one or a feigned one, becomes another way of getting attention.
Wait till tonight. Loudmouths.
Oh boy.
A loudmouth is a person who causes trouble by speaking indiscreetly or loudly, often proclaiming some sort of unsupported opinion. Typically, they become belligerent and verbal abusive when their statements of fact or behaviors are questioned.
Again, you have a social atmosphere. Give this person a few drinks, and he will be able to speak over everyone in the room. And he talks often nonsense. He has an opinion on everything, and everybody's wrong. He knows the story about everything, and he knows how to do everything, and you better hear him. And that's the best thing to say about these people who are loudmouths.
And let Dad roll over in his grave. One of the most classic examples or classic issues with this type is if they know they're up against somebody that knows what they're talking about, they will ask probing questions to wheedle out of you the answers to what they don't know, and then they'll turn it around and it's their idea. It can be very insidious and it's absolutely infuriating. But these people are also classic cyberbullies, and even worse, sometimes become cyber stalkers.
People with agendas, Obama. They are sure this is their big opening for their own TV show. You are their ticket to Hollywood or a book publication deal, and they don't care who they have to manipulate to get there.
Now this is also true if they've already written a book. They're going to use you to try to sell it. And this is also a producer who wants to use you to get to people that you know. And also to make a film and to get a freebie. They'll talk you into all kinds of things. They'll get what they need, and then you walk away with nothing. Even if you didn't ask for it, but they're going to use you, and that's their agenda, and then it's bye-bye.
Yeah, a lot of times, I mean, I'm to the point now where somebody approaches me for a television show, as I learned early on with this, and I guess, Denise, you had your baptism of fire too.
Yes, I did.
But the first thing out of my mouth is, okay, talk to my agent. If you don't do that, then you wind up with these people trying to pick your brains. You might as well advance the slide. But they try to pick your brains. They don't want to pay you for your work. They don't want to pay you for your experience. If I'm going to appear on the air, I'm going to get paid. They make money. Why shouldn't I? And that's exactly how you have to approach it. They will not take you seriously, and they will absolutely waste every minute of your time they can get if you don't make them pay up.
Or months.
Who do we have up there now?
Okay, we got control freaks.
Oh, good Lord.
Ghost groups. Please pay attention, because I've seen a lot of groups get destroyed because of these things and these types of personalities. A control freak is a person who has an obsessive or compulsive need to exert control over people and situations.
Oh, I see Terry. She knows something.
I see some shrinking violets out there.
Yes. And control freaks like to say, I am so overworked, I think I'm gonna die. I'm doing so much, I'm gonna go home and be sick. Well, we'll help you. What can we do? Oh, nothing. I'm going to handle it. Get away from me. That's a control freak. But they go on and on and on, and they micromanage, and they pick you apart, and they get angry, and this goes on and on and on, infinitum, and they'll drive you insane, but you can't help.
And of course, you've got the institutional control freaks. Need I remind you of our government? Well, and speaking of government, go ahead and read that, Rick.
An information hoarder is a person who deliberately spreads false, inaccurate, or misleading information designed to conceal facts or truth. Sometimes misinformation is distinguished from disinformation by motive. In misinformation is considered simply erroneous, while disinformation is intended to mislead.
Comments? I think you have more problems with that in the UFO end of things than we have in the crypto thing.
Yeah, well, we may. I don't know about all you ghost hunters, but we have a lot of people calling up and saying, I saw something, and I have photographs, and I have this, and I have that. Well, oh, great. Can we come out and talk to you? No, it's going to cost you. I have big secrets. And that's basically an information hoarder. And they will keep trying and trying and say, well, if you don't want it, we're going to call NBC. They're coming. They're waiting. I already talked to them.
And there's a real simple solution. Give them ABC's phone number.
Yeah. Okay, I'll get you the number. Want ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox channel? I got them right here. Here you go.
Yeah, we have, we've got a couple of hosters out there that like to practice this, and they've done a great job on Fox Network and MSNBC. And I've had the experience, and this probably should be in the other talk, but I've had the experience of actually contacting these companies, talking to higher-ups, telling them that, hey, you're being screwed, here's what's really going on, I can give you the proof. Oh, we're not interested. All we want is ratings.
Yeah, I guess in Ghost Paranormal as well, I mean, we do get sometimes misinformation. That's why it's always good to have a really good prelim and do some historical backgrounds on the people that you're getting your information from.
Yeah, and don't always believe everything you see on the internet, in TV, or on the newspapers. Do your own research, check things out, double check, and make sure you've got more than one reference that confirms what you're saying, because you'll get circular references all the time. In other words, my classic example is I used to do some research for the golf industry, and that would lead me to the National Golf Foundation. Well, then somebody else over in New York that was a market research company would print a report based on National Golf Foundation information, so you wind up with this lovely little circle of everybody supporting everybody, and they're all wrong.
Spread this throughout the media, especially if there has been a mass sighting. He who objects the most must be hiding something themselves.
That was your note, Denise, so I'm going to let you run with it.
Yeah, this is kind of true. And a lot of people out there saying that there are no such things as flying saucers, and they say it, or ghosts, any kind of spirit entity. The Greys claim to have been seen by UFO people. They say it too much, too often, too strongly. Why are they doing this? If you can really pin one of them down, they've seen something they can't explain, and they're terrified.
You mean like George Bush Sr.?
Yes, George Bush is an example. And Ronald Reagan's strange statement that he made openly.
In front of Lucille Ball, no less.
Yeah, and they have, but they won't talk about it. They won't go any further than saying, I saw something, this is what it looked like, and now don't talk to me about it. But they will declare very loudly, no such thing, get away from me.
Okay, next slide.
Okay, exploiters. An exploiter uses an event or phenomena in an unjust or sometimes cruel manner to further their own agenda without regard to what is fair and or equitable.
One classic example for me was a gentleman who made DVDs on different cryptozoology subject matter. They tried to draw me into some research that was being done at the time. Have you all heard about the Bigfoot massacre? You all remember the Patterson-Gimlin film? The classic film of Bigfoot walking along a stream bed? A bunch of people in the industry were trying to say that Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson, who shot the film, actually had a rifle that day and massacred an entire family of Bigfoot. Now, while I'm scientifically skeptical and open to the possibility that something like that could happen, making a claim to that effect when you're technically calling the people at worst, or at least animal abusers, and at worst because they previously declared that the Patty Bigfoot was what they called a digger Indian, therefore human. They're talking about murder. Well, you don't smear somebody that way. So the way I extracted myself from this little web that was designed to only sell DVDs was I wrote a letter to the district attorney disavowing any knowledge and suggesting that there be an investigation. Well, they went berserk because, of course, then they're under a microscope. But the whole thing was just designed, was a manipulative scam to sell DVDs.
wannabes. A wannabe is a person with an ambition to be someone or something that he or she is not.
These people, you'll notice, recognize right away because they have strong ambition, but they have no idea what they're talking about. And they'll make complete fools of themselves, make statements that are absolutely ridiculous. So those of you that have training, allow these people to speak for you, you're going to be real embarrassed. So you need to make sure that they're trained properly, that they know what they're doing, or you're going to be made a fool of.
In my world, the cryptozoology world, the most classic example is a gentleman who's now deceased named Eric Beckford. Eric had a master's degree in business administration and believed that just because he has a master's degree in business administration, that made him a Bigfoot hunter and more qualified than anybody else out there, regardless of their experience in the field. He couldn't stand me because I said, Eric, I'm not that stupid. I realize an MBA is someone who is basically a CPA and has a very narrowly defined area of expertise. So unless you're telling me that you're qualified to do Bigfoot's tax return, you're not really qualified to do anything in the field. So of course this guy, of course he was delusional and psychotic and all kinds of histrionic personality. He had everything in these traits and was a complete jerk, and then became a cyber stalker and backstabber and everything else. But God forbid you should know the truth about some of these people. You'll get that kind of treatment.
Fooling ourselves. This covers several categories. A person has seen a light in the sky or a wisp of fog move across the road. These folks can fool themselves into creating a whole documentary based on sightings. Something they can't explain immediately. They can truly believe that the story built up around what they saw. Once put together, it feels good to them to be able to wrap it all up in a nice, neat package for the investigators.
Yeah, this individual can have the whole story written for you before you get there, and he won't listen to anything else, including his ghost story. He's pretty much written a book before you get there. It's kind of a defense mechanism. He can be avoiding reality, and he doesn't want you to tell him anything else just in case it's not real, in case it's an airplane, in case the entity was his dog running outside and a light hit it and made a certain shadow. So he writes the book. You get there, he reads the book to you, and that's it. You can go home.
Now, the people in this category as a whole tend to be spin doctors. You want to advance the slide? What do we got there?
Denial.
Oh, yeah. This is a good one. When we started Pangea Institute, I was constrained from doing anything cryptozoological because all of my colleagues at the time felt that cryptozoology was too fringe science and that unless we stayed mainstream, we would not get any support. So needless to say, one of the gentlemen, and this is the gentleman who we affectionately call Sasquatch for a very good reason, he looks like one, was a definite non-believer in Sasquatch. But he went with his girlfriend, now his wife, up to Tennessee to his wife's mother's home. And they went out in the woods for a walk one afternoon and did the nasty, and it was late afternoon. And came back to the cabin, and Dave sat down, and she went inside, and Dave felt the need for the call of nature, so he walked off into the woods to relieve himself. While he was there doing so, something big and hairy and on two legs walked up on him. He beat a hasty retreat back to the porch and turned on the lights, because by then it was dark. Whatever it was kept walking, and he could see the shadow in the moonlight just beyond the light of the thing, so he could see the shadow from the porch light. And raced back into Winter Haven, woke me up at 3 in the morning, and we sat awake talking about it over iced tea at the clock from 3 o'clock, well, about 4 o'clock in the morning till dawn. And he was in absolute total shock that he'd actually had a Bigfoot encounter. But now it's 3 years later, and he is in total denial. Now it's, oh, it could have been a bear. Well, bears don't walk around on 2 feet, at least not for any length of time. So this is a classic defense mechanism. If it violates their belief system, they'll find some other explanation rather than what actually happened.
An exaggerated sign of this was a case I went out on that someone had seen a UFO and they were still outside, and they called me on their cell phone, and I went over and the sun was setting, and I looked all over for the individual and couldn't find them. They were underneath a picnic table. And I said, would you want to come out and sit down and tell me what happened? No. I said, why not? Well, I thought a plane was going to crash. And I handed him a pencil and a piece of paper, and they drew what they saw, and it was pretty much an unidentified flying object. It could have been a UFO. It came close to the ground over the lake where he was staying. I'm pretty sure it didn't come from here. And he was in denial. I said, well, you need to come out. No, the plane's going to crash. And he continued along that line until finally I said, well, I have to go home. You want to stay here? And the plane might crash, and that's the end of it. I finally got him out, walked him to his car, and he went home. Extreme denial.
I just remember, I guess back in the mid-'80s, early '90s, people that experience ghosts, certain types of paranormal activity, they didn't speak about it. They didn't talk about it. They kept it really quiet. But now with the shows on TV and people doing ghost investigations, and it's out there now, and some of these people are now starting to talk. And it's good to hear from them. But they've kept it locked up inside for such a long time because they didn't want to get scrutinized.
Go on to the next. Which one have we got there?
Misidentification.
Oh, classic. When I talk about the bear and the Bigfoot, that's a constant conflict. And as I said, there's certain things when I start hearing that it's walking around habitually on 2 feet, obviously it's not a bear. And most people who have spent any time in the woods know the difference between a bear and a Bigfoot, or at least you would expect that they would. Although there's lots of people out there that see red eyes up in a tree, and all of a sudden it's a Bigfoot body down below because of the foliage, and what you're seeing is an owl. But you've got to learn how to ask the correct probing questions in order to ascertain what's going on, and the distance, and you got to look at things, because there are people out there, that, particularly those that have paranoia written all over them, where they'll see a bunch of foliage and it's a Bigfoot face looking at them, or a face on Mars, or a face on the moon, yada yada yada, which is just an optical illusion.
And we have a couple more, and that's it. But go ahead with
We
the
can have
next
audience
one.
participation.
Okay. Optimist.
Oh, God.
Oh, we'll do that one. We'll do that.
Do you like that one? I'll do that one.
Now, the cockeyed optimist, now there's lots of people out there that say, oh, you got to think positive. And, that's really good. I don't see any reason not to. But the cockeyed optimist is so into it that they literally believe that if they think positively or in a particular way about something, they can actually make it happen. And it's to the point that it's ridiculous. I've been given samples of Bigfoot hair, in quotes, that have been tested scientifically and come back as bear hair that they will not accept. It's got to be Bigfoot hair. It's Bigfoot hair. It's definitely Bigfoot hair. No, it isn't. It's been given a scientific test, and that's not what it is. I've taken tracks that people insist are Bigfoot or swamp ape tracks. And if you look at them carefully and you know anything about foot anatomy, it's human. It's just been deformed. So you got to know what you're looking at. You got to know your background. You got to know your research. And you got to be able to ascertain whether or not you're dealing with somebody that's trying to think something into reality.
Last one.
I want to believe.
Oh, boy.
Skeptic. A person who authenticity of something proportioning or factual. A skeptic is open to proper scientific verification of a phenomenon. A cynic, that just changed on there? A cynic, a person who outlooks is scornful and often habitually negative. The cynic typically forms entrenched opinions that are not open to confirmation by scientific verification.
Cynics have a tendency to want to cloak themselves in the aura of being a skeptic. But there is nothing you can say or do, no amount of evidence you can present, that is going to convince them that they're wrong, and their point of view is habitually negative. Yep.
And yeah, I encounter them on the internet all the time, and they're very hard to convince if you can ever do it at all. And even if you do, they'll agree with you for 5 minutes, and then they'll go right back to their cynical point of view.
Well, that's it for our presentation. If any of you have any questions or trying to understand how to identify any of these people, we're here to answer them,
or potential pointers on what to do with them.
Potential pointers on what to do with them when you run into some of these characters. We'll be here for a few minutes. Go ahead and ask. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Hope it helps you on your investigations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess I do have a question. I don't know if Denise shared with you anything, but there is an individual that I have been dealing with. And did you share anything about that? No? Just somebody that's trying to cause trouble, really stir in the pot kind of a personality, looking to be the center of attention, wanting to take over. I would have to say he's probably got several of these personality, situations going on. I don't want to deal with that person because they're aggravated, they're blaming people, everybody's wrong, they're right, they're the best of the best, they know how to do everything perfectly, and no one else has a clue. And yeah, trying to tell me that that's the intention when I know that it isn't the intention. And what would you think would be the best way to stave this person off? Just what would be a good way to?
The principal behavioral trait that I hear there is control freak.
Control freak, yes.
But you also are dealing with someone who has such a fragile ego they can't possibly accept the idea that somebody else could be right.
Right. And that's accurate.
So you're dealing with a kind of cynicism too.
Yeah.
Particularly as regards the ability of others.
Yes.
That's really tough because they're a real tough nut to crack. The cynics are the worst. And control freaks, you'll never convince them in a million years that somebody else could possibly be correct. It is very, very difficult. And I feel for you, and being a bit of a control freak myself, especially where my poor son is concerned. Behind every successful kid stands a surprise father. Robert does know what he's doing, and he's very good at a lot of things. But my perspective is I've been on the planet twice as long, so I've had a lot more experience, and unfortunately, Robert hasn't in certain areas. So I tend to voice my opinion where I probably shouldn't and allow him to make the mistakes, but sometimes mistakes are costly. And in this economy, you can't do anything about that. You've got to be careful. So that may also be a kind of a factor in the individual you're working with, especially if your organization has limited resources. So they might, a lot of people adopt the attitude, if there's going to be a mistake, let it be mine, and not we got to share the wealth. Yeah. As long as you're prepared to take the consequences of being wrong, then you need to put your 2 feet down. And if that doesn't work, I suggest you get one of these boots and put it where the sun does. because I have discovered that that's about the only way to deal with that kind of control freak. And you know, it's bad because I've seen several really fine organizations in the paranormal field break up over that kind of a problem.
That's true.
And you know, you got to be able, if you're going to be a leader, you got to be prepared to share the wealth and share the responsibilities. Now, in times of crisis, that's why we have a president. Well, we have one that's fit to control. But you know, that's where the electorate needs to be blamed. But I still think the solution to that one is we need to put a third party in there that says none of the above. So anyway, if you can tell me more detail, I could probably offer specific potential solutions to individual circumstances. But as an overall, you got to approach it this way for that type of a problem. I don't think you got one.
Any other questions? Or anybody have any?
I have a comment on what you said earlier that's kind of interesting. When you discussed basically how some people, especially now the shows that are coming out, ghost hunting is now popular. What I've noticed though is people that tend to live in the country are much more open. Like when we have investigations and we go to country folk, you could say, they talk about it as if it's just common. Whereas when you go to more urban areas, and a lot of times more educated, you could say, but then again, that's untrue because most of us are educated. They tend to be more worried about what others
What's
say.
the number one pastime in the country?
Drinking,
Watching TV?
shooting,
Oh,
talking. Yeah.
Gossip. That's one of the reasons why they're more open.
It's a very interesting phenomenon, though, when you look at it, and
Yeah.
from doing a lot of investigations.
Well, there's an old saying that there are no secrets in small towns. And the reason is everybody in town knows what's going on and they talk about it. So, you know, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be so. In the city, people have a tendency to say, I don't want to get involved, it's just going to become inconvenient, yada, yada, yada. And so, you know, I find that when I've got to work in more city-fied environments or suburban environments, particularly in very wealthy ones, nobody wants to be inconvenienced. So you've got to be very, 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 very good about getting at the information you want, striking while the iron is hot and they're in a mood to talk, because if you give them a little bit too much time, it ain't going to happen. And frankly, the longer you give someone to think about what they've seen, the less likely you're going to get the truth about what happened. So, you know, look at the environment and the circumstances and the lifestyles of the people involved, and then, you know, be prepared for it. I've written a paper that I don't know if I'm going to publish yet or not, but it actually goes into forensic interviewing technique that deals with the types of things you're talking about.
Very interesting. Makes sense. You're right. A more open community structure.
And it's not just about the people, too. You know, the people that we investigate. For years, right next door, Ian, who FPR, he was my fire chief, and I've known him for years. And he didn't know I was an investigator researching ghosts. It's just one thing that I never told anybody. It was something that we didn't talk about. You know, we got the call, we went and did the job, and we came back, and we never said anything else. It was just, I don't know if it was just something that we just didn't do, but you didn't just tell anybody you were a ghost investigator, because, you know, they look at you
Stigma,
weird.
right.
Stigma attached with that.
So,
Yeah,
for the longest time, he never knew.
I'll say.
And but he knew that I was always traveling around the country, going to different places, but he never knew why.
He figured gigolo, right? Just
Well, I worked for the federal government
Yeah.
for 20 plus years, and they told me, you better not be doing this, and we better not hear about it. And that was a big no-no. Why? Probably because they knew I worked in a research facility. They knew something about it, and they figured I might find something out and come to them about it. No, I did it anyway. Nothing stopped me.
Being here in Highlands County, if you just drove around, you notice there's a lot of churches. I mean, every street you go on practically has a church on it. And what I'm running into is, well, there's no such thing as ghosts. Everything you're seeing is demons. So how do you, and they just totally put down paranormal investigation. How would you handle people like that?
Well, there's good and there's bad in everything. I dealt with that when I taught in the school system. I taught in a juvenile correction facility at one time. And believe it or not, this is going back to when the first Harry Potter movie came out, so you know how long ago that was. And I wanted to teach from the Harry Potter movie because it had some very, very good moral stories in it, or moral issues in it. And what I got were the Bible thumpers saying, "Oh, we don't want to talk about bad wizards and good wizards and witches and warlocks and yada 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 and monsters like that." And I said, "Oh, really? Miss Smith, didn't you just have the Wizard of Oz in your classroom? Let's see, Good Witch of the West, or Good Witch of the North, Evil Witch of the West, wizards, yada yada yada. I really don't see the difference. You wouldn't have believed the hullabaloo that caused. Fortunately, I had a forward-thinking principal at the school, and he said, "Go ahead and do your thing." But, there's an example. How do you deal with it? It's tough. I can't get a job teaching in high school in Polk County because I'm an evolutionist. Now they'll give you every excuse under the sun, but it's because I'm an evolutionist and not a creationist that I can't get a job teaching science.
It's still out there. I mean, there's still areas and places and churches that don't believe in the paranormal. I did approach my pastor and told him about what I did because I was seeking his help, because there are times when I need somebody to come in and do a blessing. Yeah. And all he said is, this is the church's standpoint, our church's standpoint. If it's good, it's from God. If it's evil, it's the devil. And he just kind of left it at that. But he didn't say it was wrong, and I've actually called him on a couple of occasions to contact people, because when you go and do an investigation, sometimes the people just want somebody from like the church, right, or somebody to come in and do a blessing. And if you remember when I was talking this morning, there was only like 4 major groups. It was either the police, or an author or book writer, the church, or the universities that investigated hauntings.
So that's how I've been answering a lot of the people. We have our name Ghost Hunter, but I work for a medical transport company, and 80% of the people that I transport, I kind of can pick up. I don't know how I do it. I can pick up if they have an experience, and I'll start talking, and it's like an open book. Yep.
The good news is it is starting to change. I mean, even the Roman Catholic Church has issued an edict under the new Pope saying, it's not inconsistent with Roman Catholic belief to believe in extraterrestrials. Right. So, I mean, over time it will change. The fundamentalists will be dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century at some point. But, you've got to be prepared to deal with that. Until that time. And you've got to remember, too, that a lot of these people have been bought up on delusional religion. I'm sorry to put it that way, but that's basically what it boils down to. Yeah. And if anything whatsoever deviates from the slightest bit from the web of their belief system, you're in trouble. It's going to take you a long time to get through it. And that's why you have a lot of people in denial. Who dive into denial because they are confronted with something that does not fit their religious philosophy, and then all of a sudden they've got to deal with it. So they're going to use the defense mechanism that goes along with denial to change the event into something they can cope with.
Yeah, that's coping. Yeah.
Isn't there a lot of countries now starting to open up their files?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, before they were very tight-lipped, and now they're opening up their Europro files.
Well, I think Bill Clinton had a lot to do with that. Bill made it pretty clear that there's something going on in the presidency that weren't being told. So I think that if we get a few more of that type, although we can do without what's going on under the Oval Office desk,
Yeah.
He'll never live that down, ever.
I still think he was one of the better presidents.
I agree with you.
That
and I'm not
aside.
sure that, other than Jimmy Carter, I'm not sure that there hasn't been a president since the first one that wasn't getting a little under the Oval Office. I mean, they are, after all, male, and they are, after all, human. But
No comment.
why did I come off as a sexist pig?
No. No.
Is there any more questions? Are we on time? Off time? I don't see.
You're ahead of time. You're ahead.
Oh, come on, you can ask us questions even if you think it's not exactly applicable.
Okay. I'm
Okay,
trying to rush it.
Yeah.
who did really let the squatches out?
Oh,
I want to know on that.
That was actually, do you all
Was that
remember?
Bobo?
Were you here this last year?
Yes.
All right. Do you remember my statement? Did you remember my statement that perhaps Bigfoot is what humans would have been or would be if it were not for the possibility that ETs were messing with our DNA? I was playing with that statement. And since last year, I might add, there's been some additional discoveries, and it's looking more and more and more like that may be true. I'm privy to some DNA reports that I can't talk about specifically, but I can tell you keep an eye on the news. Something's coming out.
When you said that last year, I kind of pondered that, and it makes sense in a way. But and there's also these things, these shadow people that we see and stuff like, And I had an opportunity to see a UFO once, and it just stayed stationary, and it was like, what are they looking down at us, or did they drop somebody off? Could these be the shadow people that we see at the corner of our eyes? Or images of what looks like, maybe all these things that we see, a lot of these things that we see that maybe we consider ghosts or hauntings could be another form of life. Or it could be, them
another
just
dimension.
here mingling
Or
with
in
us.
a parallel time shift.
Right.
How do our fields blend? At some point, I feel like we need to try and work together and try to figure out, was it an entity, a spirit, interdimensional? What's going on here?
I kid Morgan all the time. I tell him that in 2012 I'm going to put out a book. It's called Farm. And I keep telling him we are like the McDonald's of the solar system. And they come and they feed on us, but just knowledge. That's how they... I don't think they have to. I mean, they try to mutilate a cow. They don't eat much of it.
They also
My
mutilate
birthday will be
humans.
2 days after 2012.
2012.
So I plan on being around long enough to go, yeah.
Anyways, there's so many speculations out there, and I
Now,
just
the Mayans wouldn't possibly do that to me. Cheat me out of one last birthday. I mean, that just doesn't make
You
sense.
remember we had dinosaurs at one time, but they were too big and bulky, and they couldn't eat them, so they threw a rock down and annihilated all of them. And now there's people. We're able to cultivate ourselves and raise animals. And that's why
Hey, all
that's
I
why I
need to
keep
do
saying
is
that
wipe us out
we're
is,
being
have a
farmed.
super volcano blow up. So, would that be hard for somebody who can travel several billion miles?
In this field, you got to have an imagination.
And in television. Any other questions, comments, criticisms? I noticed half the people that should have stayed here for the whole thing left. Maybe we hit a little too close to the mark there. Yeah, well, maybe we should have gotten these T-shirts with the targets on
I
them.
know
Denise,
it. We almost got it.
I have a feeling we're going to go through a real
and we ran out of time.
We're going to really go through some sort of when we go out the door.
I'm not sure.